All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well today, this morning. Update to the agenda. House Bill 333 is a hold. And Delegate Ruth, I appreciate your efforts to try to, get consensus on that issue about de minimis activities. And I think we're going to, hold it to see if we can continue to get what has so far been an elusive consensus, but we're going to hold it for another week. So with that, let's go to House Bill 204. And I know the sponsor has been working with MDE on amendments, and Kristen sent out the materials a reprint reflecting the amendments that the has agreed to. So Kristen, can you walk through the bill as with the sponsor amendments?
Sure. So I'm going to start with page 2. So essentially, the bill establishes various tracking and reporting requirements for the Maryland Department of the Environment and the Department of Natural Resources with respect to enforcement of environmental and natural resources laws. So you'll see the amendments make a number of clarifying changes as it relates to the information that must be maintained by MDE. And so with respect to the reference to suspected violation, the bill is now referencing alleged violations. It also defines the term alleged violation as well as the term complaint. With new subsection B, that would apply the bill's provisions to specified programs beginning on certain dates. So beginning on October 1st, 2021, the bill would apply to the department's water quality programs that are under the Water and Science Administration that are tracked through the department's environmental tracking system or a comparable database. And then on June 30th, 2022, the bill would then also apply to water quality programs under the Land and Materials Administration that are tracked through the ETS and air quality programs under the department's Air and Radiation Administration that are tracked through the department's ETS. The rest of, most of the other changes on this page relate to changes suspected to an alleged violation, but there is also a clarifying amendment in line 13 that would indicate the electronic records would be kept for 10 years. So moving to page 3 of the reprint. So the bill as introduced would have required MDE on at least a monthly basis to update a list of new legal settlements proposed by MDE that involve violations, and that then prescribes the type of information that should be maintained. The amendment clarifies the type of information that must be maintained and requires MDE to publish the information on its website. So, and then as amendment, this information would relate to finalized legal settlements. And so the rest of the information or the amendments on this page really relate to just kind of clarifying the types of information that's being maintained by the department and published on the website. There are references in the bill that relate to information that's related to protecting or managing ambient air quality or water quality, and that's updated to protecting or managing the environment. So the information just has that more broad coverage.
Kristen, at the bottom of page 3, we have sections that are included for publication.
Can you say that again?
Yeah, bottom of page 3, inspections are also a category of information.
Okay.
That will be published. Okay, I'm sorry.
Are you asking about the changes that were made there?
No. Oh, no, I guess there were, no, but just that inspections, and you may have said this, I'm sorry if I missed this, but in addition to complaints, settlements, et cetera, inspections are, category
Yes.
of information that's to be put on the site.
Correct. So that was in paragraph 2. That relates to the inspections, the information relating to inspections. And so then, so I was jumping to the amendment. So then on page 4 in subsection 3, that would require that an electronic link, of the inspection reports be made available. And then in paragraph 4, the department must maintain a list of each enforcement action that has been initiated by the department during the preceding year. And then it lists the types of information under the enforcement actions that must be included. There goes my dog. And then in paragraph 5, that would require a list of violations that were deemed significant noncompliance or a high priority violation. And then the amendment would strike the any other elevated status of concern. And then it makes, conforming changes to the information that's required under this category.
Can I ask a quick question? I'm trying to use all my devices here to kind of follow through. So my biggest concern regarding this bill was, and I know we changed the word to alleged, and I'm trying to scan through this, Kristen, but if I get an alleged violation and it's inspected and then found to be not a violation at all, or whatever it is, however it happens, that alleged violation would have to be posted, as well as the report showing that in this maybe particular case that it actually wasn't a violation and that the individual would have been cleared. Yes or no?
So I'm not sure about that. I guess there's different types of categories of information that the department must maintain. And so when we go back to page 3,
Yep.
that refers to complaints that are received.
Mm-hmm.
And a complaint means an alleged violation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then that's the types of information that's kept there. And then after line 18, if a complaint has been closed, the date on which the complaint was closed.
And Kristen, can I ask, the information on complaints is the county in which the alleged violation occurred, which MDE administration was authorized to enforce the alleged violation. So this does not include the name, does it?
Looking at this list, this would not include the name of any.
It says the site
or
name
person.
Of the site.
It would be the county would be part of it.
So it says the site, the regulated entity, and the location of the site at issue. That would be.
That's for the finalized legal
Okay.
settlements. So that would be, that's when there is a violation.
Okay, but so
So
where
the
is,
information relating to the legal settlements would include the name of the site or the regulated entity and the location of the site.
Mr. Chair, if I could just butt in with respect to Delegate Boyce, I think Ms. Herring can probably walk us through this part of the bill. I think she's very well versed on it. So I'd like to call on her as long as you and Delegate Boyce are okay with that.
Well, how about this? Before we call on Ms. Herron, if you don't mind, Delegate, let me just ask if Delegate Boyce has any further questions, and then I'd like Kristen to walk through the rest of the bill. Is that okay?
so my concern, as I mentioned before, and I know people feel different ways about this, but to me, all of these kind of posting of alleged or suspected violations fall in all the same categories, whether we're talking about criminal, whether we're talking about these like violations. When you post something that is even alleged and it stays there, I worry about, and it has been exonerated for whatever reason, I just worry about someone using it to say, well, here's the 20 violations or the alleged violations they've had, especially if all 20 of them have been unfounded, right? And so I do worry about then what stigma that puts on a company or, someone else, because it could be, look, for all intended purposes, I want the process to work, but I don't want it to be, well, someone doesn't like something one day and then they file a complaint. And of course, the complaint has to be investigated and then it's unfounded. What does that do to the individual's essentially record as it relates to its public facing, right, to the community who can then search these records? So that's just my concern or my question to clarify.
Sure, that's a fair
question.
My understanding is, and maybe we can jump to Ms. Herron on this, but my understanding is that until something is finalized as an actual violation, the name or site of the company wouldn't be published. It would be just the county in which the violation took place, and I think the part of MDE that's looking into it. But if it's okay, maybe we should jump to Ms. Herron and Kristen, if you're okay with that, to amplify, to confirm if my understanding is correct or not. So Ms. Herron, if you're on the call, if you want to.
Yes, I am here. Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, I would like to respond directly. Delegate Boyce, I hear your concern, and I wanted to make clear that I know the language of the bill, it is a little confusing, but I want to make very clear that it absolutely does not do what you are concerned about. So although MDE internally takes these complaints in, the bill actually specifies very clear that the only information that they can post online with regard to anything that is alleged is just this general, what I would like to call like metadata. And so that is, as Delegate Stein said, the county that it was in, the department within MDE that it's related to, and whether it's open or closed. This section is really about agency accountability. What this would end up looking like in practice is something like, we received 10 complaints in Baltimore City over this time period. In the water department, 5 are open, 5 are closed. That's it. It would not at all name an address or any sort of identifying information. So nothing that is alleged is going going online. And if you wanted for me to wait later in regards to discuss some of the bill amendments, I just wanted to make it clear that the sponsors' amendments actually narrow the scope here in response to what some of MDE's concerns were. So we're only focusing on the air and water that MDE is already currently tracking. So a lot of the stuff that's in this bill is actually something that MDE already is working on or already posts, but it's important to move the bill forward nonetheless, because then it codifies it. And
with all due respect, I'm sorry, with all due respect, this is not about us not moving the bill forward. This is about us understanding the bill, so we all are on the same page. So with all due respect.
Oh, okay. So I hope I clarified that there will be nothing alleged online.
Delegate Otto, I know you've got your hand up, but Delegate Boyce, were there further questions? You're good. Okay.
If I can on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in a similar posture of Delegate Boyce. Those were some of my concerns, and I also had some other concerns about the inspection reports being posted and things. The annual reports of violations and things, I'm good with that. I think the department should make those things available, but
okay. But you're saying
the identifying factors of somebody with an alleged violation, you made me feel a little more comfortable, but I want to be sure that's the case, that it's not revealing the identity of the person and
okay.
Like,
But Delegate Otto, just so I'm clear, aside from the issue of the alleged violation, you have a concern about inspections being posted?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see, Delegate Ampry.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Hear me? Okay, good. All right. No, so I just had a follow-up question for Ms. Herron, just to get a better understanding, because I have the Delegate Boyce laid out exactly my same concerns as far as the identification and having alleged be public when it's not even closed yet, and raising concerns that aren't even there yet. That's a worry that I have. So my worry now is based on what you described, it's not going to be as identifiable, which is better. But if there's, if it's in a city or a county and there's only 3 of these institutions, doesn't that kind of still make it identifiable, right? If there's only 2 of these things here, 2 of them, my worry is that even by lessening the identifying factors, these aren't McDonald's. There's not a whole bunch of these institutions around, right? You'd be able to narrow it down pretty easy. So my worry is that it still kind of does the same thing, and that there's possible negative effects on these institutions.
Yeah, so it only requests, and I can point you to the part of the bill, it only says which, that they received a complaint and which department within MDE. And so that would not tell you the type of facility at all. So it's not going to say, an industrial facility or a construction facility. If I can go to the language, I'm just trying to find it right in front of me. One moment, it just says only. So again, yeah, I could just summarize for sake of time. It says MDE only posting the number of complaints they received, the number that's open, the number that's closed, and the county and which department within MDE. So there would be no industry type identifying facilities, if that makes sense. So again, this goes back to the intent here is agency accountability. The public wants to see how many complaints MDE receives and whether they are following up on them. But there is no whatsoever identifying information.
So I know the original bill was that would be more identifiable. So there's nothing like this that already exists. There's nothing that you can see how many complaints are available with moving. I know.
Correct. I know like Baltimore City, for example, has something similar to that in terms of 311, but there is nothing here with MDE that I'm aware of. And so again, that this particular section of the bill is aimed at that transparency for the agency and for the folks who do spot pollution concerns and have concerns to be able to see, oh yes, they received my call and they're doing something. But again, they won't be able to know really what, because there is no identifying information. Only then later, if there was, for example, a violation to be found and there was a settlement agreement that was finalized, that's when one of the amendment changes was not posting proposed settlements, but only finalized. Then somebody could go online and see, oh, there was a violation here. I see it. I see the finalized settlement.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Kristen, could you quickly review the rest of the bill, the way it stands with amendments? I guess the DNR part, I think, is pretty much unamended, but could you just run through the rest of the bill? Oh, and I'm sorry, Delegate Boyce, did you have a question?
We can run through the bill and then I'll have a question.
Okay.
I want to have a question and call on an individual. So
okay.
I'd like to go through the rest of the bill first, please.
Okay.
Okay, so as we were stating, the bill has various categories of information that must be maintained by the department. And just from a drafting point of view, beginning in line 9, subsection, which as amended, subsection E, that information under there says the department shall develop and maintain a website to provide. And so then it's the complaint information, which has the information that would relate to complaint. And it has the inspection. Pardon? Oh, Marky's on. Sorry.
Sorry, I thought I was muted.
It's okay. I'm easily distracted. So then in paragraph 2, that's the list of inspection information that must be maintained. And according to the lead-in language of that subsection, developed and maintained a website to provide, so this inspection information would be provided, and then all the information under relating to the inspections, which does include the name of the site or regulated entity, the county. So that's relating to the inspections. The inspection report is to be made available, a downloadable digital copy on the website. And then the enforcement actions would be also part of this, the information that's maintained, and would include the information that's listed under that paragraph, whether there's any penalties, orders or issues, whether further prosecution or further enforcement action was taken, et cetera. That's the whole list. Then it requires information on violations that are deemed significant noncompliance or high priority violation. And then it lists the types of information that would be included that are associated with those types of violations. The date on which the facility regained compliance, if applicable, the county, whether there's enforcement action. The information would also include a list of all expired and administratively continued environmental permits. And it would include the information, the name of the permittee, the expiration date of the permit number, the county, and any information on the status of the permit renewal process. And then the information would also include information that's currently maintained relating to violations of the erosion and settlement control laws. Again, the information that's posted would have to be kept for at least 10 years. It's to be updated on at least a monthly basis, and then maintained in the database format. And then the next part of the bill are the provisions that relate to DNR. And DNR must maintain information relating to enforcement of the natural resources and conservation laws. And then the report must include specific information, which includes the total number of inspections conducted, including the total number of inspections conducted by natural resources police officers, citations, violations that led to a conviction. Under the State Boat Act, it would require the number of inspections, number of citations and warnings issued, number of boating accidents. With respect to activities that were reported to the Maryland Wildlife Crime Stoppers, they would receive information on the total number of reported incidents, any rewards of that were distributed. And then on a regional basis, it would include information on inspections relating to commercial fishing, recreational fishing, crabs, oysters, game and wildlife, and boating, and the total number of oyster citations and warnings issued, and total number of oyster citations operated under the influence citations, and the number of boating accidents. And that would be compiled in an annual report to the governor and the General Assembly each year.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Kristen. Delegate Boyce?
Sorry, I'm reading the bill on two different devices. I had a question about, I have a couple of questions still. I just want to clarify and make sure I understand a couple of things. So I do have a question about the inspection section, and can I call on Pam Casemeyer to ask the question because she words it better than I. And then I want to talk, and then I want to respond back to last week's, because I think it's important that we pass a good bill. And so there were some concerns that I had about redundancy in the department that I would like the department to potentially speak to if there are redundancies, and if whether or not these amendments address the redundancies per what they do versus what this bill would ask them to do. Thank you.
Okay. Pam, you want to start?
Yeah, and just so you all know, I literally just got off a call with Delegate Learman about this same question. And so she's aware of the fact that I'm raising it here. And she thought that it was potentially a legitimate question. In fairness to her, I told her I would be getting back to her when I went and looked at some information. But I wanted to put it on your radar screen as well, because literally we just talked to her. And it's only the inspection piece that I'm raising. I mean, we have some questions about the rest of the bill, but we appreciate how much work has been done and how much improvement has been made. So even in terms of the complaint piece of it, which you heard loudest from us, but on the inspection piece, we're very concerned about the section on the inspection part of it where it requires the findings of the inspector and compliance and all of this. Inspection reports in many ways are the beginning dialogue about whether or not there is a violation or something that needs to be done. I think you heard from one of my colleagues the example of the hauler or the demolition contractor in the city who was hired by the city to do some work. Someone reported it, the inspector went out, issued an inspection report with a lot of violations, all of which were determined to be incorrect. In the meantime, that had been posted on the city's website and it was all over the news. And that person who was found to have none of the findings in the inspection report ended up being correct, still has issues in terms of the perception, because the inspection report often raises things that inspector finds that when it's like the beginning dialogue with the permittee. Here's what we think. And some of them are violations, and we have no problem with the later part of the bill where there's been an enforcement action or violations or whatever, but we are very concerned about the provision that the findings of the inspection report that have not been adjudicated or not been resolved, just that the inspector found, may not even be accurate. And so it isn't so much all of the information related to inspections that's in the law, but a few of the provisions that we believe posting on the website could create misinterpretations of information as opposed to adjudicated inspection reports. So
Okay.
That's the issue.
Pam, if I could ask you to get to the sponsor and also get to the subcommittee, then what amendments you would recommend? I see the section talking about the findings of the inspector and whether the site's in compliance. So if you could get any suggested amendments to us, that would be very helpful.
Okay, thank you very much. And sorry for the late insertion, but we just had an opportunity. We just had seen these today and just had an opportunity to raise that question.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you very much.
You wanted MDE to comment on redundancy, is that right?
Yes, please. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So with the posting of information online, that's something that we're already working on. So we had offered the timeline because that fits our timeline that we are currently going to achieve with having those programs and ETS have their information online. With the complaints or with the alleged violations, that's not redundant because that's not something we were planning on doing. So that is something new, and we're going to have to program that into our system so that it can pick up those nuances and then post them into an online list. And so most of it would be things that we were planning on doing anyways. That complaints piece, I would pick out as something that we were not planning on. So that is
okay. So just to be clear, so by offering the timeline, it helps put you in motion kind of with the bill so that you can complete the work that you're doing in time to be able to meet the requirements of this bill.
Yes, well, so we already have everything in motion. So we have our programmers working to get those reports automatically populated and then to get more of this information online through our new portal database. We're hoping to supposed to start having some programs online here pretty soon,
But in order to grab not just singular programs, but whole administrations, the timeline really helps us be able to achieve
Good.
that.
So in other words, this bill pushes you to finish that which you're beginning to start.
I would say so.
Okay. And what about DNR? Is DNR?
James,
James is here.
are you here?
I'm here. Good morning.
Morning.
Can you answer the same question, please?
So in terms of potential redundancies, or let's say not a wise use of the department's resources, there is this issue within the bill that requires aggregate reporting on number of convictions. I think the committee has heard this from me several times. Essentially, without the major IT upgrade that has been kind of delayed and very slow going on the part of the judiciary, we would have to complete that aggregate conviction portion by hand using the very resources that are required to do day-to-day enforcement. I would call that a pretty significant redundancy.
Sorry, can you speak to page and line of the bill that this?
Yeah, so if you give me 1 second here, I can pull that up.
So I know that in the past, the judiciary has been a problem, and just with bills that I know that I've submitted, and I have certainly worked with them to the point where they do now, for instance, with housing data, they at least post it, and they can post it by, which I pushed for zip code. So now, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is what is the problem, and I guess not talking about what you can't do, but what can you do, if at all?
Yeah, so I think it would be fantastic if the committee would consider an amendment that would essentially create a contingency that we would support, or we would begin to report the aggregate convictions data once the major IT system upgrade is completed by the judiciary, and we can pull this data accurately. And
when you say that, you mean MDEC?
Correct.
So I know that MDEC is pretty much complete with the exception of Montgomery County and Baltimore City. And that, if I'm saying this correctly, Judge Morrissey would kill me if I don't get this right, because I've bugged him for months and years, almost a year, about this, is that Baltimore City's contingency of Baltimore City finally getting MDEC implemented has to do with Montgomery County, because they already kind of had their own system. So they're trying to create an integrated system with what they already had. And once that kind of fix is done, then they can implement Baltimore City. So you would be able to do this actually with the exception of Montgomery County and Baltimore City, or all jurisdictions?
So this is a side piece of the overall MDEC. So when you're talking about the local jurisdictions being plugged in, ours is an additional component outside of that or beyond that. As of today, since we've been talking to the judiciary when this bill came forward, I've yet to see any projected timeline for completion.
I think he's told me fall of 2022.
Yeah, again, this
potentially.
This is kind of this is, again, I think, in a sort of an appendix to the overall system. So,
Okay.
I would probably have a better idea. I think there's supposed to be a meeting coming up, I think it's this week, that hopefully we would be getting some kind of timeline rather than, this sort of indefinite wait that we've been on. So.
Okay, so can you again speak to the page and line of the bill that addresses? And again, just asking again, how does DNR currently aggregate that information?
So page and line of the reprint, we're on page 6, and this is going to be line 16, violations that led to a conviction. right there. So that's the problematic line that we would be hoping. And let me be clear, we want to operate transparently. In fact, the vast majority of this report is already available to the public. You just got to be able to, crack open a budget book and ask the right person. In terms of, I'm sorry, your second question was, Delegate?
How do you aggregate that information now? Should another agency or the legislature ask for that information?
Well, we really don't. That's kind of an issue. We have, we have a very poorly constructed, and this is an internal system that we have been trying to use for years, but has consistently found to be inadequate, leading to misreporting. So to continue to use that for the purposes of this, what we see as a very important report, it would just not be a good use of anyone's time.
The word of the day, the word of the year is technology. It's like,
it is indeed, yeah.
We got to step up. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, we've had good discussion about HB 204. Clearly, we're not in a position to do anything with the bill at this point, so we'll await potential amendments from Pam and further discussion. So unless anyone objects, we'll put this on hold and then move to House Bill 295. So last we talked about 295, we had a copy of the amended version as it came out of the Senate. We have an amendment from Delegate Boyce, and I believe also we have an amendment from Delegate Otto. Let's see, before I ask Delegates Boyce and Otto to comment on their amendments, any questions about the amended version as it came out of the Senate? And that should be in your packet as Senate Bill 227. So the Senate did make, some amendments. I think we did discuss them last week. So if there aren't any questions about the Senate amendments, Delegate Boyce, if you could remind us what your amendment would do.
Mr. Chair. So essentially it adds an association that has expertise in stormwater restoration projects. So I think it adds another professional to the group, so that there's, I guess, the feeling that it's just a little bit more well-rounded when we're talking about these issues.
Sure. Okay. Delegate Otto, your amendment?
No, my amendment adds the Maryland Association of Soil Conservation Districts to the commission. They do a lot of the erosion control and stormwater plans.
Right. Okay.
And I would like to know a little more about what the Senate, how they changed the bill.
Okay. Kristen, could you do
to put you on the spot, Kristen?
Oh, that's okay. So one of the requirements in this bill is that the Department of the Environment review and update their stormwater management regulations. So one amendment, and in the bill as introduced, it set a date by which those regulations needed to be updated. So that was taken out of the bill. And instead it requires the department to report to the Maryland General Assembly on or before November 1st, 2021, regarding the precipitation data and the department's plans for updating the stormwater management regulations. An amendment was also added for the term precipitation data. And the Senate also expanded the list of stakeholders that the department must consult with when developing the stormwater regulations. They added local government, MEMA, and a private sector entity with design and construction experience.
All right, those sound good.
Yeah, and then there was an amendment that would clarify that the department may not delay the implementation of any new requirement or standards established under regulations. That was just to clarify that there's no delay on the implementation of the new stormwater requirements that are developed under the bill.
Is there a time frame that they have to do this? I mean, after it's done now, that they have to come back? Is there a 5-year period or 10-year period, or is it just?
Yes, so on page 6 of the Senate bill, you'll see that they're required to review and update the regulations at least once every 5 years.
I think, was that a concern of the department of how quickly that transpires, or is?
So I know.
I remember somebody making some reference that 5 years is a short period of time to make.
Yeah, I think the builders
Yeah.
felt that was a short period of time and suggested, I think they even said maybe 10 years.
I do believe the builders have withdrawn their opposition to the bill. I don't know if Lori or Bob Enton are on the call to be able to confirm that.
One of their concerns was addressed in the Senate amendments. I believe it was adding that the person with the design and construction experience to the stakeholder work group.
So I just wanted to say, I think the 5-year period is important because, of course, we're having more rain events and we're having more issues. So 10 years, I think, is a bit too long. And 5 years may be tough, but I mean, that's the climate change issues we're dealing with. So I'm wondering, Mr. Chair, is there any reason why we should not move this bill?
No reason at this point. But before we entertain a motion, I do want to get back to Delegate Otto. I checked my email and I did get an email from Lori Graff saying that after discussing with the sponsor and stakeholders, we no longer have a position on the bill. So as an FYI. But Delegate Boyce. Yeah, if I think if the subcommittee's good with it, a motion, I mean,
Would be to adopt, the motion would be to adopt to the Senate bill?
yes, and then we can adopt your Delegate Otto's.
Do you want to do, Christian, should we do the bill or the amendments first?
So I think
go
what
ahead,
would make
Kristen.
sense, and Delegate Stein, I mean, you can interrupt me, but just a motion to conform the House bill to the Senate bill as amended would be the first step. And then the second step could be, moving on to the stakeholders.
Okay.
Because that would just be added to those amendments.
Okay, got it. So I certainly move House Bill 295 to be conformed to the Senate version.
Okay.
I second.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. And now the other amendments, Delegate Boyce.
Move the amendments, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so
Second.
both yours and Delegate Otto's amendments. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, amendments carry. So the bill as amended with all of our amendments, is our motion in favor?
I'll move.
Okay, so second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, bill as amended carries. Thank you. Okay. Yes. All right, so we've got 10 minutes before noon. If we spill over a little bit past noon, if some, at least, so I don't think we'll be making a decision about 264, but if anyone can stay on for at least a few minutes, great. 264, last week, Delegate Vaughn Stewart very nicely said that he would try to take up the remaining issues on 264. I should say there still is a question about the fiscal note, which we would have to get approval from appropriations before moving forward. But nonetheless, in terms of the substance of the bill, Delegate Vaughn, you want to discuss where things have gone?
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. So just for everyone's recollection, I know we've obviously covered this bill a few weeks now, but this is Delegate Charkoudian's bill that requires, in some instances, generators of large amounts of food waste to separate it out and in some cases to send it to a composting facility. And I think the rationale behind the bill is essentially not only is it good in terms of climate because of all the methane emissions that landfills have produced and all the emissions that incineration produces, but also there's a big economic opportunity here, and the other states that have done similar things have generated a lot of economic development. So the two outstanding issues that I worked with the bill sponsor on were brought up by Ms. Casemeyer, which number one, address capacity. So basically what happens in scenarios where the facility doesn't have the capacity to take the waste from the generator, from the hauler, which gets it from the generator. And then secondly, what happens in scenarios where waste or materials are contaminated or they're hazardous, and who bears the responsibility for that and what occurs. And so I worked with Delegate Charkoudian. We reached out to two industry players, one Adam Ortiz, who works with the Montgomery County and who set up Prince George's facility, and also Ben Perry, who I believe is on the call about these concerns. And essentially what they said, though, I would love the opportunity to let Mr. Perry recite it in his own words because he'll do so much better than I can. But essentially what they said is that these issues are currently contracted around, and that essentially the facilities contract with the hauler often contracts with the generator, and there are clauses in the contracts that address these. But more importantly, that these issues just don't come up very much, because they're in the contracts. And so I believe Mr. Perry said, he's not aware of any time that a facility didn't have enough capacity to take certain waste, that's just not a problem that really happens. And that secondly, there are several clauses dealing in these contracts that deal with contaminated waste. So, there are fees that, go to the generator if there's contamination. In some situations, the facility can just handle them or, dump them off on another facility. And that issue does come up, but there's never any real problems because it's contracted around. So I feel comfortable with the answers that we've gotten from these industry folks that these problems are not severe. I would at the end like Mr. Perry to expound upon that because it's possible I misstated it. But then the other thing that the sponsor did, which I think was wise, is draft an amendment to really sort of put an exclamation point on this. And I believe Kristen has the amendment. And so Kristen, I may want to, I'll hand it off to you to just read that if that's okay.
Sure, and that's in the back of that.
Have it up. I'm happy to read it too, Kristen, but if you want to, if you have it up.
Actually,
I can read it.
no, it's okay. I can bring it up. I thought I had it up. So under the meeting materials for this bill, there was House Bill 264 additional amendments. The first one was a suggestion by the sponsor if the subcommittee still had questions about what is included under the term restaurant. And then Delegate Stewart amendment follows, which would further clarify that the bill would apply when a facility is willing to enter a contract to accept and process the food residuals.
Right. So basically the idea here is that contracts can solve these problems, but only if they exist. Our understanding is the facilities generally do contract, but in order to basically sort of push these issues aside even further, we put in the bill that they have to be willing, the facilities have to be willing to contract for the terms of the bill to apply. So I think, with the amendment and with the sort of existing practices as I understand it, I think the bill is in pretty good shape. And just to remind everyone, because this issue has also come up, it's a little bit of a sort of tertiary issue about just kind of the burdens that apply to the industries that are still under the bill. And I just want to remind everyone that there are pretty generous waiver provisions in the bill, where if basically a facility would experience undue hardship or undue cost, or if the cost wouldn't be similar, there are all sorts of waivers available when it's not possible. The point of the bill is when it would basically cost about the same and wouldn't be especially hard for these huge generators of waste to send it to a facility, they should do so. And if we can make that happen, like other states like Vermont have done, we can really bolster this industry in a positive way, create lots of jobs while we're cutting back on harmful emissions. So I think it's in good shape. I tip my hat to, the advocates and certainly to the bill sponsor for working with everyone over the last week really hard. My understanding is that Ms. Casemeyer has seen the amendment. She likes it. She thinks it's helpful. She may still have, some concern that she can share, but I know she's had a lengthy back and forth with the bill sponsor. And with that, Mr. Chair, I think I'd like to just hand it off to Mr. Perry, and if he could just briefly, correct the record on anything that I stated or otherwise say that I was brilliant in my recitation of his.
Now, Delegate Stewart, not to delay any commentary from Mr. Perry that you're brilliant or not, which confirm, but Delegate Ruth does have her hand up, so I'd like to ask a question first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say I think these amendments are great amendments that really strengthen the bill. I think the amendment about being willing to enter into a contract is a great solution for the concern that facilities would not have the capacity. And I just wanted to thank Delegate Stewart for his work on this.
Okay, very good. So
yeah, well, everyone can just say nice things about me then. I appreciate it.
It's a Vaughn Stewart love fest here. So
there we go. Yeah. Well, Mr. Perry is, I think, his industry or, his facility has done an amazing job. He's really an industry leader in this and is probably one of the most knowledgeable people in Maryland on this issue. So if he could just briefly sort of give his take, that would be awesome.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Be happy to. First and foremost, I think you're all brilliant. But last week, when as a viewer of the subcommittee hearing, I got the impression that hauling organics to a compost facility is complicated and not feasible, while hauling waste to landfills and anaerobic digestion facilities doesn't pose similar issues, but really that's not the case. So as Delegate Stewart mentioned, there's really no fundamental difference between contracts for various types of waste streams and facilities, whether that's composting, anaerobic digestion, landfill, recycling, or incineration. So those contracts, they define what waste can be accepted, how much waste can be accepted for what price, contamination fees, policies, along with other standard terms and conditions. So I think that what Delegate Stewart is mentioning is correct, and the waiver shouldn't pose an issue, and that confusion really should go away.
Okay, thank you. Delegate Boyce, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chair. With the exception of the fiscal note, would it be appropriate to essentially move this bill and just, I guess, it until we wait for this fiscal note, or I mean, if people are comfortable with doing that?
Sure. We could move the amendments and then hold the bill before approving, the bill as amended, pending resolution of the fiscal note. In addition to the amendment that Delegate Stewart had just mentioned, there is the amendment which is in your packet from the sponsor about defining restaurant for the bill, and also
that.
The reprint, and Kristen, remind me if this is the only one, she does have an amendment to partly address the fiscal note, the sponsor does, that takes section 4, which would require DGS to do a report on state properties that are suitable for use as organic recycling facilities. So I think those are all of the amendments. Is that right, Kristen?
That's correct. And then there was the one piece too where her amendments would require that a warning be issued as the first
right.
when there's a violation.
Yes. Is that in the reprint?
That's in the reprint, yep, in the penalty section.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, can I move the amendments?
Sure. Yes. And just to be clear, all the amendments we're talking about, restaurants, the contract issue just discussed, and the two that are in the reprint, the warning and deletion section 4. Yes, sure.
Mr. Chair, move the amendments.
I'm sorry, just so I'm clear. These are the sponsor amendments in the reprint. You are adopting a definition for a restaurant.
Yep.
And then Delegate Stewart's the contract position.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So those 3, right?
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Second.
Actually, I think it's 4.
So it's the definition of restaurants. It is the specifying the contract. It is the warning of violation. And what was the fourth one?
It's taking out section 4, which required the DGS
So-
and DR to.
I'm sorry, I was counting the sponsor amendments as the one set of amendments.
Okay,
okay.
sorry.
There are several components in her amendments that I can run through, which it is more than 3, but I was including that her first set of amendments as, that would be moved. But we can talk about each component if that makes it clearer for everybody.
Or Kristen, are the two amendments in the reprint?
The reprint is just the sponsor amendments.
Right.
There's another page that has the additional language, the restaurant definition.
Yep, I saw that.
And then Delegate Stewart's contract provision.
Yep.
Right, but the amendments in the reprint, the sponsor amendments are the provision of a warning in the penalty section, and then deletion of section 4.
Yes, so it strikes section 4. It excludes restaurants and the aggregate of all school buildings and facilities in a local school system, so not the aggregate of schools.
Right.
It clarifies that the facility must have the capacity and willing to accept all of the person's food residuals. The warning, the department must issue a warning first when there's a violation. And then, as we already stated, that it strikes that the study that's required, that was probably at least half, I think, of the fiscal note. So that's the reprint has
Okay.
part. And then there's the 2 additional amendments, defining restaurant, adding contract provisions.
Can we adopt them all together in one batch?
That's if the subcommittee is comfortable with that, that's fine.
Delegate Boyce?
I'm comfortable with moving the reprint as they state the sponsors amendments, as well as the amendments presented by the committee.
Okay, is there a second for that?
I second.
Okay, any further discussion? All of the amendments? Okay, if not, everyone in favor of the amendments, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great, and then we'll hold.
Move the bill. We're not gonna, don't we need to adopt the bill as fully amended?
I'd like to hold it at this point until we get confirmation that the fiscal note is okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could,
Yes.
I just spoke with the bill sponsor about the fiscal note, and obviously we'll defer to you on what you want to do. She told me that she had had a conversation with the chair of the Appropriations Committee a couple weeks ago, and that the chair expressed no concern about the fact that the fiscal note might be as much as $90,000 over the $100,000 threshold.
Mhm.
The study that we just lopped off with the amendments lops off about $100,000 off the fiscal note. So the most it would be is 190. The sponsor spoke with her about that 190. Apparently the chair of the Appropriations Committee said that was fine informally. And so if it's prudent, we could potentially clear our desk here by just moving it and then holding it in full committee if we haven't gotten the full sign off from Chairman McIntosh. But I will obviously defer to you.
There's also a leadership component of this, Delegate Stein. Fiscal notes are kind of flagged around $100,000. And so there's
Right.
second with them too.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Delegate Stewart. And I do remember that the sponsor had told me she'd had a conversation with the head of appropriations. I would like to hold the bill and not move it with the amendments until our chairman can get confirmation with the chair of appropriations.
Cool.
You told us is certainly helpful and sounds encouraging. So if the subcommittee is okay, we'll keep the bill as is in the sense that we've adopted the amendments, but we're not moving the full bill as amended until the chair of the committee gets confirmation on the fiscal note issue, which hopefully will happen. So, okay, well, thanks for, especially Delegate Stewart, your work, but other subcommittee members' work on that bill. and the others. So with that, we are done. For next week, turns out I have a conflict at 11 a.m. Wanted to see what folks thought about meeting at 10 a.m.
Don't we have floor on Wednesdays starting next week?
Oh, you are right. You're right, Delegate Ruth. Thank you very much. That's right. Next week, Tuesday through Friday. So never mind. So I guess we'll have to revert back to our scheduled meeting after bill hearings. So thank you. Okay. So that's when we'll meet again. And thanks for everyone's good work.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.